Okay, good morning. Surprised actually managed to make it here, but fortunately they decided to let flights come into the UK very late last night. Sorry, not late last night, night before. This presentation, I'm going to provoke some discussion. I'm going to go through some stuff which hopefully you already all know, and you've all got the same. Okay. Somebody really doesn't want me here, do they?
Unless you click on the OK.
Right, is it going to work okay? Cool. Okay, so we're going to talk about a little bit about the legal issues, obviously, and the technical issues, the general network security problem, and then go on to talking about SORBS and SORBS 2, and particularly what it can do for you. Oh, hang on. How do we get... That's better. So, provoking discussions and introducing... Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Hang on. That's better. Provoking discussions. You might find me Microsoft bashing a little bit. I apologise if there's anybody from Microsoft in here, but that's one of those things. I'm a Unix admin. I do a bit of ISP bashing. If there's anybody in here from anybody that I bash particularly, my apologies in advance. I see somebody nodding up the back, so I know I'm going to get something back. And of course, sales and marketing. I'm a techie. I don't like sales and marketing people. They tend to cause more trouble than anything. So, what is spam? Well, some people just say it's the penis enlargement pills and devices, emails. Some people say bank scams. Some people say unsolicited bulk email. Some say unsolicited commercial email. Of course, there are some people that says it's all unsolicited email, and some of them just says it's all advertising email. And then you get the remainder that just seems to say it's all email that I don't want. That, of course, brings us to a few problems. And what SORBS does... Oops, too far. How do we go back? That'll do. Thank you. We define spam as unsolicited commercial email. We also define it as unsolicited bulk email. But the real reason why we actually define it as unsolicited commercial email is because in most cases, the commercial email is usually bulk as well. The problem is, when we're recording spam, if we've only got one hit on the spam trap, people might turn around and say to us, well, you know, it's only one, we only sent it to you, we didn't send it to other people. So we've been accused previously of listing people too quickly, and then when we actually delay that out and wait till we get sort of 10 or 20 from the same source, of course the problem then becomes that person's been able to spam 500,000 people before we've actually managed to list them. So we tend to be rather quick on the trigger, and we're trying to get quicker on the removal as well, so that people are not inconvenienced too much if we make mistakes. Of course, some of the fallout that we get is mailing lists that decide to use their sign-up email as a spam in its own right. I say the simple thing is if you're going to sign me up for an email, I want a confirmation back that just sort of says, you know, you've opted into this list. Please click here to confirm you are really who you want. And yet some of the email lists seem to come back and turn around and say, oh, we've got these 10 different products and services, blah, 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 blah. Oh, by the way, click here to subscribe right at the bottom. And you think, was that actually a sign-up for a mailing list, or was that just somebody exploiting the issue to send me lots and lots of spam? Of course, the other problem is there are opt-out mailing lists, and they get listed from time to time. And I make no apologies for that. If you're running opt-out, then you deserve to get listed, because sooner or later somebody will decide to use my email address. Okay. Legal speak. We have the Australian Spam Act in 2003. This is probably one of the best pieces of legislation that I saw. I actually had a little bit of input into that because I had the people from the ACMA and the people involved in the writing the legislation come to me and said, here, read this draft, what do you think? So I actually sent some input back to them, and I think there was one little change that went in based upon my feedback, but that was it, so I was quite pleased with that. There's the Privacy and Electronic Communications EC Directive that came out at the same time. Now, legislation is very, very similar to the Australian legislation in that it requires senders of commercial email to have consent to send email to the recipients. And by the recipients, this means if you want to send email about your company and your network services, you need to have my permission before you can email me. Now, the problem is the UK and EU decided to modify that a little bit and had a little fatal flaw in it, because they turned around and said business addresses are exempt from this rule. So it means if you happen to have a business card with an email address on it and somebody gets that email address, they can spam the crap out of you and there's nothing you can do about it under the law. That's really, really annoying. Of course, the other thing is we have the Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing Act of 2003, aka you can spam if you're in the United States. So many flaws that I won't even bother going into here, but I mean they exempt things like political spam, which I'll get onto a little bit later because I have some issues with that in my own right. And of course, yeah, it effectively legalises spam because it requires opt-out, not opt-in. Now, consent and inferred consent. This is the little tricky bit when it comes to all of the spam acts, but in particular the Australian one. Consent is the easy one. If I give you permission to email me or ask you for something and you email me back the details, then obviously you haven't spammed. That's obviously your opt-in. But what if I've told you the information, that I want the information, and it's not my email address? So I've actually gone to you and said, give me all your details on all of your products, and given you some other random person's email address. Of course, you don't have consent to use that email address. So the first thing you should do before adding it to any list is it opt in and actually confirmed the opt-in by actually mailing them back. As I've got in my notes here, it could be an accidental sending it off to somebody else, it could be a typo in your address, or it could be damn well deliberate. I had a little bit of a problem back in 2004. I suddenly started getting lots and lots and lots of spam from all sorts of different companies around Australia. And I listed them, as I usually do, and then I started getting complaints, and I actually had phone calls from the ACMA because they get a feed of all the data. And they said to me, you know, you've turned around and said you've listed all this. We've had half a dozen people come back to us after we've chased them up and said they have your business card and they got it from the CBIT conference in Sydney. And I said, well, that's interesting because I've never actually been to a CBIT conference yet. So it seems that somebody had actually printed a set of business cards with my email address on it and gone and handed that out at the conference. What do you do? This is a bit of a problem for everybody. It's ISPs, it's marketing agents, everybody. How do you do this? Well, the easiest way is just make sure that you've got the email address of the person you think you have. Now, inferred consent. This is the most dangerous method to collect email addresses because it's more likely you'll end up sending spam. Inferred consent is generally accepted when you do business with someone. For instance, if I was a BT Internet account holder, you would have inferred consent to send me information about other BT Internet services. What is not inferred consent, though, is with a BT Internet account holder, you mail me with some unrelated services like UK TV licence information. Or you choose to mail my webmaster address because, of course, that doesn't give you any right, and it doesn't give any of your customers the right to mail me back, well, anything, because I never give out that address for anything. Of course, the reason for this is where the line draws even closer. I have Google Ads on the current Sorb site, as people have no doubt noticed, and you would think that Google has the right to email me. Well, you're pretty much correct. The problem is one of my staff, one of my volunteers, runs their own web services. And they've decided in their infinite wisdom they don't actually want Google to search their websites at all for any reason. So they put in the controls so that they don't do it. Problem is Google decided that they wanted to search it, so some very interesting person inside Google decided to mail the webmaster address at that host. That webmaster address at that particular host is not advertised anywhere because it doesn't exist. It's not a real address, it's a spam trap. And it went straight into Sorbs. And then we had Google phoning us up saying, what's going on? You've listed us. You know, we have inferred consent. And it's like, no, you don't, because the spam went to this guy over here, his website, you know, and you had no permission to deal with him at all. He had no account with you, nothing. He's just sent the spam on to us. So inferred consent is always a real difficulty. Now, technical issues. How to stop spam? Well, we all know blacklisting, grey listing, whitelisting. We do a bit of standards enforcement. You can stop a lot of spam as well. Of course, there's heuristics and AI type of tests. How not to stop spam? This is always an interesting one, and it seems to come up more often than not. Challenge response. Do we have anybody here who's actually tried it? I haven't got anything heavy on the desk, I promise you. Yes, we don't do challenge response, not unless you want to do it at SMTP time, which is something I wrote a while back to actually test it out, but nobody seems to pick up on it, so I just let them die. They always seem to want to send these emails back, and of course the emails always have an advert for the challenge response system that you're running, which then of course makes it spam in its own right. Accept then bounce. So many people are still doing this. There's really no need, guys. Delete, drop, and silent discard. So many times I've seen this. People sort of say, I didn't get your email. How do you get this with sort of support? They come up and sign up on the website, put in a request to be delisted. You send the text back to them saying, oh, you need to do this to get delisted, or, you know, what happened here? We're asking them questions, what happened here before we'll delist them. And then they come back 2 weeks later and sign up another ticket. You didn't answer me, blah, blah, blah. So we go back into the mail logs and we check, because we record all the mail logs for about a month. And it's just like, yeah, message sent here, accepted by the remote server. And it's just like, guys, you know, go check your mail logs. It was delivered to you. And it's like, oh, you triggered a spam rule. It's like, yeah. Call out verification and send a verification. There's all sorts of different names for it. We'll get onto that one in a minute. And of course, spam folders, I hate them. So blacklisting, we've got Sorbs, we've got Spamhaus, we've got CBL, we've got SpamCop, we've got the AHBL, we've got Najabal, and we've got, I think there's about 987 others that are listed quite easily to get hold of. And there's probably several thousand more on top of that if you actually go looking for them. Of course, the advantages of them is they're quick and simple checks, and if you know what you're looking for and it's a well-maintained NSBL, then it's very, very simple to use. The disadvantage, of course, is they're quite usually a sledgehammer where you actually need a scalpel. And Sorbs is included in that list as well. Okay. Grey listing. Blocking senders by IPs by default, temporary failures. It's a great idea. Except for the fact that the bots don't actually care about it anymore, because the latest bots will quite happily carry on sending and sending and sending, so it doesn't really stop much spam now. But it's really, really good if you happen to be sending mail from a Yahoo account, because Yahoo just gets the temporary failure message, and then 554s it the message back to the original user saying, I can't deliver it. So, yeah, there's all sorts of different issues you get with it. The advantage is anything with the older type spamming engines or the viruses. It's actually fairly good at getting rid of viruses because they don't try and keep resending. Of course, the other disadvantage is mail gets delayed. Most grey listing engines that I've seen so far by default delay mail for 20 minutes. So if the remote mail server decides that it's going to go 1 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, an hour, the mail is automatically going to be an hour. Seen it done so many times. And by the way, the Sun 1 mail system does those 1, 5, 10 automatic retries, so yeah, forget an hour. All right, whitelisting. very useful in conjunction with blacklists, and you see a lot of people use it in conjunction with greylists. One of the things I actually came up with was, how about if we block everything and then just make a whitelist of the mail servers that are actually good out there? It's probably going to be a smaller list nowadays, and it's probably going to be easier to maintain. Of course, that's also the principle of firewall, and I actually built a sort of spam firewall back in 2004, which never ever made it to market, thanks to legal people. But that was actually designed to look for real email rather than looking for spam, because all of the spam engines I see out there currently look for for spam, and of course, spam continuously changes. Real email tends not to. Real email tends to be the same all the time. So the idea of it was just flipping the entire thing on its head. It worked very well. Standards enforcement. So many times I see problems with this. So many of the bots out there don't know how to reverse look up their IP addresses. And of course the internal networks are often something Microsoft, so you find they come up with this local net or local domain or just whatever their Active Directory domain is, which of course usually doesn't relate to anything on the internet whatsoever. So it's really good just to look at whatever they try and send, and if it doesn't relate to anything, just reject it. Postfix will do this by default. I cut down probably about 20% of my spam, but just by doing that. Yeah, sure, it gets a few false positives, but at the end of the day, those people really need to know how to set up their mail systems, because if they're running an Exchange server on there, connected to an Active Directory and sending out hellos of things which are just internal addresses, and bearing in mind that there's one government organisation that was doing that, swore blind to me they didn't, spent 2 days arguing on the phone to me while I was at one of my previous jobs, and then went, how the hell do you know our internal addresses? At which point, I enlightened him a little bit more, and he was a little bit embarrassed. So, of course, heuristics, we all know, rules, patterns, scoring. The accuracy is pretty good on a lot of things. Spam Assassin is not too bad at this sort of thing. AI tests. Oh, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong one. AI tests. Artificial intelligence, is there really any such thing? I don't think so. But there's all these different learning engines. And the sort of spam engine that I built was based upon a support vector machine. Challenge response, yeah, we talked about that one. Yeah, accept and bounce backscatter. One of the things that you'll find at the moment with Sorbs is we try not to list this, but one of the things which you're going to be doing on Sorbs 2 is making it available the data of when people do send out a lot of backscatter. There is the backscatterer DNSBL out there, but it's, yeah, people keep on commenting about the mental stability of the person who runs it, so I'm being a little bit wary of that one. We all know that spammers and viruses and Trojans routinely use fake addresses, so really we shouldn't be backscattering people. We shouldn't really be sending things, especially, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but there is a UK ISP that has incoming and outgoing virus scanning, and in outgoing they let it out anyway, complete with a header saying virus scan fail, and incoming they do even better, because they will just bounce it saying you mustn't send us viruses, and it's just like, cool, thanks, and it sends the entire message back with it. They got listed on Sorbs. So what we did in the past, because this slide is from an older one, is I actually patched postfix for libclamAV integration, but of course with the later postfix you don't need that anymore. In fact, I've stopped maintaining the patch completely. You just use it with libmilter now and milterclamAV. Just be warned though, just do keep an eye on your logs, because a couple of days ago I found that I was actually trashing all of the mail coming into my system because ClamAV decided to send out a nice little network kill for anybody running an older library than 0.942 I think it was, and it just killed the entire mail system on one of my servers. I wasn't too impressed. But above all, reject, don't bounce. We've discussed a little bit about this, but yeah, RFC 2821 states if you accept responsibility for a message, you accept responsibility for the delivery. So deliver it. Don't just bloody put it in the bin. You might have detected something on it, but really deliver it or just reject it, one of the two. And this is the problem I come again with people with the subs messages. You know, they decide in their infinite wisdom that things from non-return addresses, that they're just going to bin. We didn't send out some things deliberately with non-returnable addresses because we don't want the stuff coming back to us if somebody has faked it. They're the sign-up for on our web form to actually register an account. It's the confirmation message. You know, things like this, which if it doesn't, you know, just the mail server can just reject it. If it can't deliver it, just reject it and drop it. It doesn't matter. But people seem just to see this address coming in, just dump it straight in the bin. Of course, then 2 weeks later, they start arguing with us. I'm going to have to move fairly quickly because... here we go. Call-out verification, sometimes called sender verification. Don't do it. It doesn't really help. All it does is just turn your system into part of yet another giant DOS system. I've been hit by this crap. I've seen my mail server taking over 1,000 connections a second because some spammer decided to use sorbs addresses across half a dozen different people that are using call-out verification. It's bad. The really good thing it is for is if you happen to be running a mail service for your customers, like Cybertrust does for various different government agencies around the world. So they're running their outgoing gateway. You can use the sender verification to your internal people to make sure they're real addresses. You can also use the call-out verification for the destination to make sure they're real addresses that they're coming from, because they're your customers. Don't do it across the internet to people like me. Spam folders. I hate spam folders. What's the point? Users either check them and sit there reading the spam, or they don't bother checking them. And at the end of the day, your resources are already being consumed. Why are you consuming more resources to deal with it? Same thing goes with I'm just dropping though. You know, if the person doesn't read their spam folder, then it's just going to go unread. You're better off just rejecting the message at the beginning. Okay, sorbs is a block list. Many different data sets. It's a crude, and it is really crude in the current state, but effective tool. It's also very efficient in some ways. And of course, the wider use of it, the more effective it is. You know, people keep on saying that we should die off and disappear and stuff, and they're the people that, of course, get blocked by it and then suddenly find they can't send email to half the world. We're, of course, not quite as big as people like Spamhaus, but in the same respects, we tend to see a lot more responses than I think Spamhaus get. Now, we're owned by GFI, as you probably read in the news not too far distant back. But it's still run all by the volunteers, and by me particularly, and GFI have committed to keeping it as an open project for the community as long as we can, which means that we won't be charging for it. We might be putting some additional premium services on there, which I'll get onto later, to try and do some cost recovery, but effectively it will still be a free DNSBL for the world. So, a little bit about security, and I don't know, how am I doing for time?
You're 2 minutes over.
Oh, thanks. I thought I had 35 minutes. I've got 24 up here. Okay, well, I'm just going to skip through then, if I'm already over, because you all want to get to the useful stuff. Sorbs 2. Okay. Okay, we'll just stop on this slide for a second. So, security. The previous slides talk about security. Gives a couple of examples of what happened to me in some previous jobs, some funny ones and some not so funny ones. The biggest problem that we've got is in 2007, security seemed to be missing these AgoBot and SDBot variants. 99% of the infections were put down to those. The problem is they're not just spam bots though. Most of these bots and Trojans out there that do all the spamming, they're actually DOS bots as well, apart from the fact that they do self-replication. And they use self-replication not just by email, but by Windows share. So once they get in on your network, they start spreading between things. You've got real problems. We need to get these out. We need to get rid of them. Obviously, this not so much of an effect for ISPs and network core. It's more of a problem for businesses. 2009, more than 80% of the infections were Rostock spam bots. I don't know what the other ones were out there. I couldn't grab the statistics while I was on the plane. Something to do with Ash. Rostock also enables the spamming and DDoS as well. In fact, there's been some fairly significant targets hit with the Rostock DDoS bot. And yeah, the people who run them, well, they attack anti-spam systems, they attack corporate systems, and they attack anything they particularly feel like. IRC servers, you name it, whatever suits them at the time. Bang, see ya. Okay. I'll let you read that one in later. Sorbs 1 and Sorbs 2. The Sorbs admin interface. Now, can I get to the web from here without breaking things?
Yes.
Okay. I'll show you the Sorbs web admin interface and stuff later. Basically, the admin interface is fairly antiquated. We've got a couple of different data sets. We can look stuff up. It's not too different from what's actually out on the public website. The main thing is, of course, we could see things like the entire spam or the entire log entry that caused a bot vulnerability to get listed. All of the data that comes into Sorbs 1 and into Sorbs 2 gets fed straight off to the ACMA. All of it feeds off to the Australian Police in real time every day. We're hoping to expand that out a little bit further, but basically they take that so they can deal with spam in Australia and deal with the bot infections in Australia. And of course they liaise with all of the ISPs, which leaves us with a little bit more time to get on with detecting new ones. Sorbs 2, on the other hand, is this highly configurable interface. It brings a lot more power not just to us, but to you as well. It's designed to offload the administration to the end users. It's designed to give fine-grade reporting. You can actually log into the Sorbs 2 website and say, I want to report on this IP address. If it ever spams, if it ever gets listed as a bot, if it's ever hosting the DNS that's for a spam website, i.e. via a bot, it will actually send you an email instantly. It'll actually send you SMSs as well. But this is the bit we were talking about, premium services, things like that, of course you have to pay for. But we can actually get this thing to send you SMSs and alert you to anything on your network, all the way down from /8 or even the entire internet if you particularly want, all the way down to a single IP address. The main difference is, of course, is if you actually asked us for the entire internet, we'd probably ask for a platinum credit card or something like that first, because it's like, yeah, the amount of SMSs would be ridiculous. We're currently listing 55,000 or thereabouts spamming addresses per day, and another 28,000 Trojan hosts per day, to give you some sort of an idea. And that's all of the IP addresses, not the amount of times that they spam. We have the ability to see the top 10. If anybody happens to be on the Sorbs 2 site currently, which is www.beta.sorbs.net, you can just go to the menu and just see what the current top 10 are. That's generated every day. I can generate it every minute, but it tends to get a little bit processor intensive. We have the ability to track botnets. Because of the way we're storing the information, and we're storing everything, we can actually track a botnet around any particular network. We can actually map out the botnet based upon the virus type, and we can map it out via the spammer type. So that if we identify a particular spammer as using a particular URL in their spam, we can actually map out the entire botnet that they're using. We can also map it out to all the other different spammers that were using that as well, and all of the DNS servers that were involved. So it literally maps out absolutely everything, and it's been recording data quite happily since 2005, with about a 1 week break when I made a mistake 2 weeks ago. We're also doing URI tracking and publication, and we'll be releasing a URI BL in the not too far distant future, once we've just ironed out 1 or 2 things with the administration interface. Now, the demonstration. Let me get there. Now, And you'll have to excuse the self-generated certificates. It tends to frighten some people away. I do usually love the way they say not recommended. No. Okay. Go away. Okay, the first thing to see is just go away. Come on, where are you? And as if by magic, it doesn't work. Fantastic. What happened? Yes. Go. I'm going to blame Internet Explorer at this point because it works quite happily on my laptop and every other machine I've tried this on. Can anybody else see that? You just... Sorry? Oh, we've got Firefox. Okay. Let's see if Firefox is quite happy with it. I don't know why that hasn't displayed. Apart from it being a version of... No, go away. Oh. I cannot type for the life of me today as well. At least I can still talk. Alright, log in. Come on, log in. Add an exception, get a certificate, confirm. Go away. Log in. Right. That's a bit better. That's what it should look like. Thank you, Internet Explorer. Anyway, network name for the world. Of course, I'm logged in as my old account. So there's quite a bit of detail there which you as the general user probably wouldn't see. What you're more likely to see is something like this. Because I used to work at the Griffith University and I know a few people there, so I decided to give them a few accounts as well. Now what we have is we have their main network, where all their users are, their core networks and their mail servers are, attached to this name of Griffith University. We can do this for anybody. In fact, I think we've got some EasyNet people here who should have access to this already because they already went through some of this. Now, we can assign different roles out, and as you can see by the list, it's quite extensive about what we can give people and what we can deny them. The interesting ones are the... where are they? There's some read. Here we go. Those three are really particularly important to people here. As a normal user, as an untrusted user, you'll get read headers. As a trusted user, if you're a trusted ISP, you'll get read evidence. When it comes to the ACMA and the Australian Federal Police and any other law enforcement agency that asks us, they get access to read original. Now what happens there is, when you go to, give me another window, thank you, .beta. Anybody got a particular network that they would like to look up? Anybody? Okay. I'll select one then, because I happen to know that the Griffith University have got a few test entries amongst other things. So 132.234.0.0/16. Now you'll notice that unlike the current SORBS implementation, which can only handle single IP addresses, you can chuck in just about whatever you want in there. It will barf if you try and look up a /8 though, and it will barf anything larger than that because we just don't want you to do it.
Does it handle IP6?
Sorry?
Does it handle IP6?
The website does, and so does the backend database, but there's no point in us doing that at the moment because there's no way of getting us out to DNS. However, hopefully with Bind 10, they might have solved that. But this was designed to cope with both IPv6 and IPv4. IPv6 is currently knocked out on the front of the website, so you can't do anything with it because we don't want you touching it yet. Okay, so different view for SORBS 2. We have spam entries, and it's telling you the latest, when the latest was listed. We've got hacked entries, we've got spam-vertised entries. Yeah, how far are we over?
About nearly 15 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to have to make this very quick then. Basically, you hit the show detail when you're logged in. If you're not logged in, you can't see this. We have show headers. And if you come and ask us for stuff, this is probably what you're going to get. If you just email us in saying, give us the headers for these mails, that's what you'll get. Now, what the Federal Police get, though, is a little bit of a different view, because they get all of the headers and everything that was sent to us, and they get it in a raw format. It's all been sat there with your pre-tags, just to show you in raw format. This is recorded into a database, and we checksum everything going in, and it's into a table which is a write once table effectively. And it all gets written out to DVD every so often. So we've got currently 80 million spams in there. And every single one of them is completely untampered with, and we can go to court at any point with a prosecuting agency and say, this is the spam we received off these people. We let them put all the evidence together as far as of who sent what spam and how to prove that. We just come out with the evidence of all the damage that they've done. Now, because I'm running out of time, anybody can actually ask for these networks. We can set up whichever networks you want us to attach, etc. And as you can see, there's a few people out there that have got various different things. We can also give you permission as an ISP or as a network operator to manage your own. So we can actually say, okay, what's your networks? You give us your networks, we'll put them in, and then we'll just give you the flag that says you can manage your own. So you can get your own staff on and give them little bits of the network to sort out. Now then, Network Manager, this is the other new thing. Okay, it's another view that you'll get, and basically you have the ability just to press the button and just say, okay, what's listed on my network? And you can have a whole list. If you've got your network name, which has got a whole list of networks, you can just hit the show listings for your entire network. And it might take a little bit longer because I know that one's a little bit big. Perhaps it's going to take a little bit longer than I wanted. You'll also notice an additional buttons which have appeared as well, which is update usage, dull, etc. And I'm going to bring that one up very quickly in this and then close after that. Anytime you're ready. Network Manager. What we want you to do, because we operate with people like Visa Verification, etc., looking for botnets, they also want to know where your dynamics are. They want to know where your core networks are, because if suddenly a core network device starts logging into Visa Verification site, they tend to like that information because it might be something wrong. So what we've got is the ability for you to log in, and unfortunately it's, I would give you more of a demonstration, but we'll run out of time. You can basically list all the different network types, and we export that information to people like Visa and other agencies, so that we can determine what the likelihood is of that being a real or a anomaly event as far as they're concerned. This is where it becomes useful for you, but it also becomes useful for us as well, because at this point, if we suddenly start seeing things spamming from core networks, which are not your mail servers, we know that you've got a bit of a problem, or you're doing some network updates, etc. We can give you a call about that and actually let you know that there's a problem coming along. The whole point of SORBS 2 is to offload a lot of the administration of what we're doing, so that you don't have to wait for us to update the dull. You don't have to wait for us to say, oh yeah, this is static, you know, that's all good. You're going to be able to do this all yourselves. And the real key to it is once you've done it to yourselves, if we see something happening that shouldn't be happening, we can give you a call. We can send you an email. It's a way of getting an external view of your network, which you might not have access to at the moment. The whole point of Sorbs 2 is no longer about spam. It's more about security, and it's more about telling you of what's going on. We just need the information of what's going on your network so that we can feed you back stuff when it doesn't make sense. And on that note, I will leave it at that. I would love to show you more. If you've got any more questions or anything like that, please do come and actually shout, and I'll take you through stuff. And my apologies for going well and truly over. Thank you.